If you're working in UK financial services, you know just how complex the rules are. And the stakes, they're incredibly high. Making compliance work isn't just a nice-to-have, it's an absolute must. So today, we're going to tackle a really critical piece of that puzzle.
To do that, we're going to be looking at this through the eyes of the experts at Compliance Consultant. You might know them by their well-known persona, the compliance doctor, because they're specialists in diagnosing and fixing these exact kinds of compliance headaches.
Okay, so let's dive in. We're focusing on a really high-stakes area of regulation from the Financial Conduct Authority, or FCA. It's called the Senior Managers and Certification Regime. You've probably heard it called SMCR, and it puts senior leaders directly in the regulatory spotlight.
And that brings us to the big question, one that everyone in a senior role should be asking themselves. Are you absolutely certain that your responsibility maps, the way you've documented who does what, aren't accidentally exposing your firm, and maybe even you personally, to serious risk?
Now, if that question made you feel a little uneasy, you are definitely not alone. A lot of firms really struggle with SMCR mapping. So let's walk through some of the most common and frankly most dangerous mistakes that experts see out there every single day.
First up, and this is a huge one, unclear accountabilities. This is that messy situation where maybe two senior managers think they're responsible for the same thing. Or, what's even worse, a really important responsibility falls through the cracks because nobody thinks it's theirs. Let me be clear, the FCA has zero patience for that kind of ambiguity.
Another classic problem? Major documentation gaps. We're talking about statements of responsibilities that are way too vague, totally out of date, or they just don't reflect what people actually do in their day jobs. And this isn't just a paperwork problem. To the regulator, this is a fundamental breakdown in your compliance.
And then, what happens when a senior manager leaves the business? All too often, it's just pure handover chaos. Without a solid process, all that critical knowledge, all that history, just walks right out the door. This creates these really dangerous gaps in accountability that can leave your firm exposed for months.
So it's really important to understand these aren't just small administrative slip-ups. The consequences of getting your SMCR mapping wrong are actually quite severe. We are talking about some very high-stakes risks here.
And this really says it all. Bad mapping doesn't just put the firm at risk of FCA enforcement action. It puts senior managers at risk of personal liability. That means the risk sits squarely on the shoulders of the leadership team.
Okay, so with all those challenges on the table, what does a real solution even look like? Well, let's take a look at a structured framework, something often called a playbook, that's designed to help you get this right.
So what is an SMCR playbook? Well, think of it as your complete guide to allocating, documenting, and crucially managing all those senior manager responsibilities. The whole point is to bring clarity and control to what can feel like a really chaotic process.
So what's actually in it? Well, a good playbook breaks everything down. It starts with the basics of the SMCR framework itself. Then it gives you a step-by-step process for mapping responsibilities. It'll also guide you on how to write good statements of responsibilities and set up clear handover procedures. And best of all, it usually comes with templates and checklists you can actually use.
Now, this kind of approach isn't just some theory. It's a practical framework that's built for the real world. So let's talk about why a solution like this actually works. Its effectiveness really comes down to a few key things. First, it's got to be aligned with the regulations, built on what the FCA actually says and does. Second, it gives you practical templates so you're not starting from a blank page. It also has to be action-oriented, a clear method you can put to work right away. And of course, the whole point is risk reduction, to help you find and fix those accountability gaps before a regulator does. So you might be wondering, who is this for? Well, it's absolutely essential for compliance officers and senior managers, but it's also incredibly useful for HR directors and company secretaries. And if you're a newly authorized firm, it's pretty much a must-have for getting your framework set up correctly from day one. At the end of the day, getting SMCR right is all about moving from that feeling of uncertainty to a feeling of control. And that comes from having a clear, repeatable process. Being proactive is really the only way to manage this effectively.
And when you think about it, a small investment in your process can protect your firm from what could be an absolutely enormous financial and reputational risk.
So, here's the final takeaway. Instead of struggling with vague job roles and that constant feeling of regulatory uncertainty, a clear, practical framework is your key to getting SMCR mapping right.
If you'd like to learn more about the specific playbook we've been talking about, you can get in touch with Compliance Consultant, the home of the compliance doctor. All the details are right there on your screen. Thanks for joining me.